But thanks all for coming. We're going to start quickly with an icebreaker. So on your tables, there's a bingo card. And what you're just going to do is talk to your fellow participants and try and get a bingo. So we'll do this for the next probably 7 minutes-ish. And then I'll bring you back in. So is there any other instructions?
No, you guys should get up and walk around.
Yes.
And yeah, find some neighbors and then yell bingo. I don't know what the prize was.
Yeah, no prize. The prize is meeting everyone
The
else.
prize is winning.
Alright, okay. Finish your combos and then head back to your seats. We'll have bingo again next time too.
I want to play really bad.
Alright. Okay. Tonight we have Public Works and Mobility. And so I'm just going to hand it straight off to Jeremy.
Thanks, Kalina. Thank you all for being here. I'm Jeremy Keene. I'm the Director for Public Works and Mobility. And it's my pleasure to talk a little bit about what we do here in Public Works. I've got a number of my staff here tonight helping me with the exercise and with any questions you might have. I have several hundred slides to cover because we do a lot of stuff. Let me introduce these guys. So first on the end here is Ross Mullenhauer. He's our engineering manager. Brian Hensel is our deputy director for streets. Logan McGinnis is our deputy director for the utilities. And over on this side we have Aaron Wilson in the back there. He's our transportation planning manager. And Ben Weiss, who is our senior planner for transportation. So small group of staff that I work with every day, and it's an amazing group. I never have to ask them to come to this. They just say, when do you want me there? And it really shows the pride and dedication they have to doing this job and being part of this department. Public Works is really about infrastructure and core services that really make a city function. It's kind of all the things that happen behind the scenes to make Missoula a great place to live and work or come to visit. And our work is really grounded in the guiding principles of the city's strategic plan. You probably heard something about that in some of your other sessions. And these guiding principles really speak to the people and the services and the health and sustainability environment that we work in and look to promote as we do our work. And so when we talk to our staff about what that looks like, how do we carry out that mission, we talk about things like service and safety, integrity, accountability, and priorities and projects and progress. And one of my favorite things is done. We're about getting things done. And we love solving problems, we love challenges, and we challenge ourselves to make a difference in the community. And it's not just about being busy, we're focused on specific outcomes, and these are all tied back to the city's strategic plan. And so first is really about maintaining our core services. So this is fundamentally what we do. It's things like safe water, safe, clean drinking water, wastewater collection and treatment, and resource recovery, water quality and flood protection, the transportation networks that we all use every day, and our city cemetery. Next, we work to support and invest in community design and livability. So a lot of what we do is around the processes and the regulations that go into supporting sustainable and equitable types of development and promoting a diversity of housing types. So that's part of our strategic goals, and we look at ways that within Public Works and Mobility we can leverage things like our process and regulations to make those goals work and be easier. To look at how we use our city-owned land and create opportunities for growth and redevelopment, and ways that we invest in public infrastructure that supports safe and vibrant neighborhoods, options for housing, clean and healthy environments, and sense of place and belonging. So as we look at our work, we really try to prioritize both the projects that we're doing, the new things we're building, as well as the infrastructure that we maintain. We're also working collaboratively to improve outcomes around economic health. So this includes things like policy making with external partners, such as the Montana Department of Transportation, the county, state legislatures, our federal delegation. We've worked hard in the last few years to increase our grant writing capability, so that we're bringing money back to the community to help us fund projects and find the capacity to administer those grants. We're also working to build partnerships to help set grant priorities and build support for projects that help us remove roadblocks when we go to implement those things. So working with the private sector, with community partners to really align the projects that we're doing with what people want to see in the community. And finally, workforce development, a key part of what we're doing to try to build capacity to build things, to staff the projects that we have. You all, I'm sure, have heard about the challenges with labor and with finding good quality skilled folks to do that work, and so we're involved in trying to help steer people into those trades and into those professions that can be really good jobs and really help to get our work done. So finally, organizational excellence. We're going to make sure that we have the capacity to be responsive and to provide effective services. So like I was saying, this includes recruiting and retaining an engaged and innovative workforce, managing our space needs and technology to provide good workspace for our people, supporting employee safety and well-being, increasing our community engagement so that we are communicating well with all of you, with all of the public on the projects that we're doing, and working to develop a results-oriented management culture. So really looking at how we're meeting our goals and what are the metrics we're using to measure those goals. So this takes a lot of people. We have about 170 people in our department. There's 5 different divisions, as you can see here. We have 11 different sections and business lines underneath those divisions and about a $48 million annual budget. So it's a big department. It's probably second only to Parks Department in terms of number of people, and one of the larger budgets to manage. So there's a lot of responsibility there, and we really work hard to take care of that money and to provide good service for our community. So the administration division supports our 4 other divisions. They provide business and financial management, communications, safety and risk management, and also our utility billing and customer service. So the bills that you see every month for your water and sewer and stormwater, that's coming from our department, and our folks are always available to help with any questions you may have or issues with the billing. So we have about 18 staff members in our administration. This is what the org chart looks like. 27,000 utility customers. So that's our customer base, and we have 5 different office locations around the city, and we staff 5 different public boards and committees. So in addition to City Council and the Public Works Committee, we have a Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, we have a Cemetery Board, and a couple others that we help to staff. So our planning and engineering section, their purpose is really to plan and implement, support private and public infrastructure projects that are advancing our city goals. In transportation planning, we have 3 different sections. The first there is the Metropolitan Planning Organization. This is the MPO. It's a city, state, county organization that basically works to allocate the federal money that we get for our transportation projects. So it's a little bit broader than the city. We take in the whole urban area, which goes beyond just the city limits, and we work to plan and implement transportation projects together. Missoula in Motion is kind of our program side. These are the folks that are working on transportation demand management. They're advocating for rideshare and using your bike and riding the bus, finding other ways to use transportation in our system, which helps us manage the demand on the roads, so we can keep the traffic flowing well, and the folks that do need to drive, we have capacity for that. And then finally, transportation planning, which is sort of an overlap with the MPO, but we're looking at how we plan for and develop our local projects. And then similarly on the engineering side, we have 3 different sections here. We have a development review and inspections group. These folks are looking at private development, so they're reviewing plans, they're involved in subdivisions, they're making sure that everything is built to our standards and specs. Surface transportation is really where you see things like sidewalk projects and intersection improvements, traffic signals, roundabouts. And then our utility engineering section is working on water main replacements and new water tanks, sewer lift stations, a lot of the things that are happening underground and behind the scenes to make everything work well. Just a few facts about what we're doing. We have about $13 million in water and sewer utility projects going this year, so you're going to see some construction out there. We'll talk more about why in a minute. We also have 18 different transportation projects underway, including 5 sidewalk and mobility projects. We're seeing good results from these types of projects, about 5% annual increase in bike ped traffic across our commuter network in the last few years. So that's good. It's good to see that we're actually getting some results there. We also look at the number of building permits, because part of our function is to help with the production of housing, and so we track the number of building permits that we're seeing. Had a couple of real big years. I'll show you a graph in a second here. And then we've received about $40 million of grants in the last couple of years, and that's pretty significant. So we've been real successful with our grant writing, and have become kind of the model for how to get that done in the state, and also being recognized around the country for the work we're doing. So here's a couple of key metrics. First one is safety. This one is actually a concern for us. You can see that graph on the left it's kind of headed in the wrong direction. So the top bar is serious injury crashes, and the bottom bar is fatal crashes, and you can see they're trending up. And this is something that's happening nationally that we're worried about. For a long time, we were on a downward trend as far as safety in terms of crashes, and it's ticked back up since the pandemic, and there's a lot of factors in that, but it's something that we're really aware of and concerned, and looking for ways to try to mitigate those issues. And one of the ways we do that is with our quick build traffic calming program. So you've seen some of these projects go in with the delineators and paint, and it's a quick, inexpensive way to address safety problems that we're seeing, particularly in the neighborhoods, without waiting for bigger, more expensive capital projects to happen. And so we've been able to respond quickly with those. You can see that the number of projects we've done in the last 3 or 4 years has grown, about 24 in total. And we're seeing good results from those. On those streets where we're working on traffic calming, we're seeing anywhere from a 25 to 60% volume reduction and a 5 to 30% speed reduction. So these are streets that we want to have operating at a lower speed and with fewer cars, so that they're not being used as cut-throughs in the neighborhood. Here's our housing metric. So just looking at the number of building permits, we know that we need somewhere between 500 and 700 units a year to keep up with our demand, and so you can see some years we've fallen short of that. In the last few years we were able to catch up a bit with some bigger years, and now we're actually seeing a drop in building permits, and that's partly due to construction prices and higher interest rates, and the market is still adjusting a little bit there, but we know that affects housing affordability, and so trying to keep that production high is an important goal for us. So I'll shift over to our utility operations and maintenance division now, and this is the water cycle graph that we like to use to talk about our utilities. It's if you really think about the way that water moves in our system, it starts out as rain, it's stormwater, and that runoff goes into the ground, and then we get our water from the aquifer. So Keeping stormwater clean, keeping contaminants out of the stormwater is really important for our drinking water. We do very little treatment with our water. It comes out of the ground very clean and doesn't require a lot of expensive or specialized treatment. It's pumped in wells and to reservoirs, so water tanks you'll see around on the hills, and then it makes its way to your house. Oops. So it makes its way to your house, and then it leaves your house in the sewer system, goes to our wastewater treatment plant where we reclaim that water and discharge treated water to the Clark Fork River. We also use treated effluent to water the poplar farm, which you have maybe seen out there on Mullen Road. About 70 or 80,000 trees that we put over 1 million gallons a day on that water on those trees in the summer. And so that's a good way of keeping additional nutrients out of the river so that it can be absorbed into those trees, and those trees provide good environmental benefits in terms of carbon sequestration and also just taking up those nutrients so they don't end up in the river. So our water utility, their basic purpose is health and safety of Missoula by providing clean, safe drinking water. We also provide water for fire protection and irrigation, which is another important safety consideration when we have more developed areas. There's 4 main sections in the water utility. Production, which is the wells, that's getting the water to the tanks. And then distribution, which is all the mains under the streets that distribute the water to everybody's homes. And then we have a service group, those are the folks that come into your house and work on your water meter or provide help if you have an issue with your water. And then finally, water facilities, maintaining those various well sites and other facilities that are part of the system, including the electronic controls that we run all the pumps and valves with. So all told, it's about 340 miles of water mains, 40 wells, 26 storage facilities, and 22 booster stations, 36 pressure reducing stations. So it's a big system. It's complicated. It takes a lot of expertise to run. Produce about 9.4 billion gallons every year. In addition to that, we maintain about 1,700 fire hydrants. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been working on replacing and upgrading all of our meters. So all the meters that are in your homes, we're gradually replacing all of them, all 27,000 of those customers. And we have to date replaced about 13,000 of those, so we're about halfway through, and continuing to do about 2,500, 2,600 a year. And then the last thing there, we collect water samples on a regular basis to test and make sure that water is staying clean. Do you have a question?
Yeah, why are you replacing the water meters?
So they had just gotten to the point where they were failing, where they were not reading, we weren't able to read them, especially being able to read them remotely. So the new meters that we have transmit by a radio signal so that we can pick those up either on a radio tower or with a vehicle driving by, and it helps us more accurately bill for the water to make sure we can measure that consumption. So had a pretty high failure rate with the meters that we had, and we made the decision just to gradually phase those out and replace them with newer, more modern meters. Yes?
Where does the aquifer come from, the drainage?
Well, that's probably more than my expertise, but we're in a big valley, and there's a number of rivers that come into the valley and charge that aquifer, but it's also runoff.
It's mostly the Clark Fork. I mean, yes, there's water that leaks out of Rattlesnake Creek and Grand Creek. They all leak into the valley, but by far the aquifer is really recharged by the Clark Fork. What's that?
How far down is the aquifer?
Not very. I mean, in some parts of town, the water level's 10 or 15 feet below ground. On average, it's probably 40 or 50 feet, something like that. Our wells tend to be 120 to 150 feet, just because you don't want to take the water that's right on the top of the aquifer. You want to let it filter down through. And
Right.
So yeah, it's an amazing aquifer. It's voluminous and fast moving, and we're very lucky to have it, but it's not very deep, so we have to protect it. So everything that you do on the surface can make its way into the groundwater. So here's a graph of our main replacements. We're working on a goal of replacing about 1% of our water mains every year. We haven't quite gotten there, but you can see we've been ramping it up over the last couple of years. This year we're going to do just under 3 miles of water mains. We have a system that's over 100 years old, and if you think about the life of a pipe, some of those pipes are well past their life, and a 1% goal is basically a 100-year replacement plan. So we're looking to replace those pipes over a 100-year period so that they stay functional. Water leakage is one of our biggest issues. So as those pipes get old and start to leak, we spend a lot more money and energy pumping water. And so we're trying to reduce our leakage in the system. And this is a cool graph because we do leak studies to test how much water we're losing in the system. And you can actually see when we do a major water main project, you can see that leakage go down in the leak study. And so there's a trend of, as these pipes get older, we're seeing more and more leakage. But every time we do a major replacement, you'll see a little spike go down, and then it starts back on that trend again. So you can see we've kind of gotten it going in the right direction, and we'll see if we can keep it going that way. Yeah.
Do you know approximately how much linear feet or whatever you measured in the 1914 pipe? I noticed some of your recent projects you're replacing, and is that a steel pipe that they put in back then?
Yeah, the 1914 stuff we call calamine. It's basically a galvanized steel pipe. And I've kind of been waiting to calculate from once last year's projects get updated to our GIS system. I want to see where we're at, and I'm sure there's probably 5 miles left, something like that, of the really old stuff. But there's lots of other pipes that need to be replaced too. Some of the worst stuff was like surplus after World War II, and it's really thin walled, and so that's it's called invasion pipe, and that's the worst stuff we have. And we don't have much of that left, but we're focused on trying to get rid of that.
It's called invasion pipe because it came back from Normandy.
Yeah, they made it intentionally with thin walls, so a couple of GIs could pack it across the beach. They were pumping. I think they used it like this was surplus. It wasn't actually in Normandy, but it was intended for pumping gas, and maybe they were pumping water. I don't know, but it was intentionally light, so it wasn't really meant to put in the ground and leave it there for 70 years. What we decided to do.
Wasn't us.
Yeah.
So part of what we do is we prioritize those types of lines that we know are most likely to be leaking. And then we also do a lot of listening. We have listening devices that we can attach to fire hydrants and other things to detect where we have leakage and try to pinpoint where we're really seeing problems. It's a hard, because of our soils and the aquifer, it's really hard to tell where we actually have a leak because a lot of times it doesn't ever come to the surface. It just disappears in the ground. So it's not always easy to pinpoint where we're losing the water.
I was just curious if any of our lines are made with lead.
No. There's some of the old, before the 1930s, they didn't have rubber gaskets.
Yeah.
And so some of like that, the 1914 stuff, a lot of times has hubs, like a bell and spigot pipe. They actually poured molten lead around that hub. So there's bits of lead in those locations. We're not aware of any lead service lines. It's really service lines that are the national problem. Nobody ever made water mains out of lead, I don't think, but there's lots of places that have thousands of lead service lines.
Not in Missoula.
Not here. There's been a handful of what's called a gooseneck. There's like this much pipe where it connects to the main. That's like a little chunk of lead pipe because they put it in because the main was here and the service came here and the lead was malleable. So we've occasionally found those, but like maybe 5 of those in the 20 years I've worked here, and we remove them as we find them. So basically, no, there's no lead services here.
So we're lucky there that was not a common practice in Missoula, and we don't think we have many, if any, lead pipes. And it's a big issue for a lot of cities right now, trying to figure out how to deal with that. So our wastewater utility is on the other end of this, working to provide safe and environmentally conscientious management disposal of our wastewater. I think we have a really interesting, we call it the resource recovery facility, and it's really a comprehensive facility working to reclaim water and solids and reuse energy. I think for a city of our size, it's really state of the art, and we're doing a lot of great things out there. I would invite you to take, if you have an opportunity to take a tour out there, it's really interesting. So we have on one side we have collections, so that's all the pipes that are getting the wastewater to the plant, and then on the other side the resource recovery facility. And that's made up of we'll start on the right side. We have a pretreatment lab, so the lab is monitoring what's coming into the plant and monitoring all of the biological processes that are happening to treat that effluent. And then that whole facility then separates the solids and the liquid effluent, and so some of that effluent goes to water the poplar trees. The biosolids go to the compost, and then we mix that with green waste and make compost, and that can be reused for other things. So very little of what comes into the plant gets wasted, and we really tried to make that our mission to recover as much of those useful things as we can. The whole system is 28 different lift stations, about 1,700 residential and commercial sewer tank effluent systems, step systems. These are pressurized sewer systems that we help maintain. About 2.8 billion gallons of wastewater annually go through the plant. And we produce about 28,000 cubic yards of compost each year. We're also generating about 700,000 kilowatt hours of electricity each year, and diverting 155 million gallons of treated wastewater to the poplar farm. So it says 36,000 trees. I thought we had more than that.
No, we planted more than we had to thin them. We're left with 36.
They're big.
I feel like I have so many questions. So I thought I heard that the poplars were going away and they're being replaced with alfalfa.
Yeah, so one of the things we're trying to figure out what to do is those trees are of a size now where we need to harvest them, and we don't really have a market for them. When they were first planted, there was a mill in Oregon that was doing poplars. It's a hybrid poplar, so it's kind of a soft, pulpy wood, and most mills aren't able to handle that as either for lumber or for peeling it for plywood. So we're going through a couple of different pilot projects to determine what to do with those poplar trees as they get to their maturity. So one idea is to convert back to another crop like alfalfa. We've looked at several other types of crops, and then we're also we're experimenting with sawing them into logs or into lumber, and looking at other ways that we can convert that crop. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but that's one of the things that happens when you try something new, and it was an experiment to see how we can best use it. And I think we definitely will continue to do land application. We're just not sure if that's the crop that it'll be. Yep.
Could the poplar trees be turned into biochar?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we've looked at.
We've looked at it. I think we're a little ahead of the time for biochar. I mean, so it's something that we've spent a lot of time researching. The equipment is really expensive, so we could spend a lot of money to make some biochar. So I would say it's not like this.
Have you seen the char loss that the Forest Service has?
Yeah. We've looked at that. There's a lot of different units, and so yeah, it's something we've looked really hard at, honestly. Like it is a very promising way to lock carbon in the soil for sure. It's just maybe 10 years from now that'll be what we should do with it, but they're not going to last that long, I don't think.
You also heard of the place up in Columbia Falls, this greenhouse uses tailings from the lumberyard that's up there, and they, I think they do algae in supposedly this greenhouse. It's probably a little bit bigger than this room. Produces enough electricity for 100 homes. Have you heard of anything like that?
There's a company that was using a similar, that was piloting a similar technology actually at our resource recovery facility, a company called Clarez. And they're using algae to clean up wastewater, but I think they were also producing power.
Yeah.
So,
And they were also making biochar out of that
Okay.
process.
So right now, we're doing a couple of things to produce green energy. One is we capture the gas that comes off the treatment plant and run that back through a generator that produces electricity. And then we also, about a year ago, opened a project with almost 1,000 solar panels that produces electricity for the plant. This is a graph that shows, you can see the green is when the solar panels are making energy, and then the red is when we're using energy from the grid. So it's cyclical. Each one of these is a day. And then so when the solar panels are going full, we're generating almost all our power. But we still have to fill in those gaps in between. So the third utility is stormwater, and they're in charge of protecting our groundwater, both surface and underground water, and ensuring compliance with state and federal requirements. So we have what's called an MS4 permit, which requires us to regulate stormwater runoff, and it mostly has to do with construction work, where we're working to prevent contaminants from getting into the groundwater system or the surface waters. This picture is from Cattail Corner. You might have seen the project going on the corner of Russell and 39th. And that is part of our stormwater system, and so we did some improvements to that detention basin this year that will really make it function a lot better in a more natural way, and also be easier for us to maintain. So what that does is it provides some storage, and it also does a lot for sediment removal before that water goes onto the Bitterroot. So we have a fairly small group with stormwater. It's only 4 people, but they get a lot done with stormwater maintenance, program coordination, and environmental compliance. They're in charge, along with help from our street division, of maintaining about 10,000 dry well sumps and stormwater inlets. They collect water samples. We have about almost 300,000 linear feet of storm drain pipe in our system that they clean and maintain. We also do a lot of training with consultants, contractors, city employees on best management practices for green infrastructure, for spill prevention, for erosion control measures during construction. And we also do permitting and inspection with construction projects. So one of our challenges is with resources. Our goal is to get to about 500 of those stormwater inlets every year, and you can see that graph shows we're not getting everything we need to done, and it's a problem of resources. It's a problem of equipment. We had a pretty major equipment failure with our vac truck last year, and so we didn't get much done. So this is one of the stories we have to tell, is that it's challenging to keep up with all of this infrastructure. A lot of it's aging, and it takes people and equipment to get it done. So our street operations and maintenance division is all about ensuring our public streets, alleys, bike lanes, lighting, signals, traffic signs are all maintained and functional for safe travel. We have 3 different groups in streets. There's a communication signals and streetlights group, we call them the comm shop. And we have street maintenance, which is folks that you see out there doing pavement maintenance, and traffic services, which does our signing and striping and a fair amount of the snow removal in the winter on sidewalks and bridges and things like that. So all told, about 337 miles of city streets, 65 miles of alleys. We do snow plowing, street sweeping, leaf collection. We install the traffic calming devices and crosswalks that you see around town. Test and maintain 73 traffic signals and 480 streetlights that are city-owned. Large portion of those traffic signals are owned by the state, the Department of Transportation, but we have a contract to maintain those for them. And then in addition to that, we do electronics and safety equipment on police vehicles and other city vehicles. So radios, computers, lights, sirens, things like that. Here's a metric for you with potholes patched. So in the last couple of years, we did almost 12,000 potholes a year. And this is sort of a eyeball measure of how our pavement's holding up. As you know, each year we're seeing a few more potholes, and that's sort of an indication that our pavement's not in great shape. A little more scientific study we did a couple of years back actually did a pavement condition survey where they gave it a grade. And think about your school grades. You know, our arterials are kind of in a B- condition, and local streets are more like a C. So they're not bad. But with current spending, the estimates are we're only spending about half what we need to on maintenance. So the estimates is that we should be spending about $9.4 million a year on pavement maintenance, and we're less than half of that. So that's a pretty big concern for us long term in terms of how well we can maintain that pavement. Because if you don't maintain it, it's like painting your house. If you don't paint your house and you end up having to go in there and replace all the trim or your siding, it's a lot more expensive. And so the same thing happens with streets. If we get out there and do regular crack sealing and chip seals, the streets can last a long time. But if we let them go to where the potholes are starting to break them up, then it's a complete rebuild, and it's much more expensive. Okay, and finally, city cemetery. I didn't know we had the city cemetery when I took this job, but it's an interesting part of public works. We operate and maintain over 100-year-old cemetery. It's really an amazing place if you get a chance to go out there and visit. We have a full-time crew of folks that maintain it. It was founded in 1884 and purchased by the city in 1901. So 120 years, and it's 50 acres of irrigated, maintained green space. It's a beautiful arboretum of trees. It's a really quiet, special place. And we do 75 to 85 interments a year, and it's about 21,000 total out there, and some great Missoula history. So that's a really quick, high-level version of what we do. I invite you to ask these folks questions if there's anything else you're curious about. It's a department that really covers a lot of different areas, and a lot of the things that my measure is when we're doing good, my phone doesn't ring, and it's a lot of things that people take for granted. And so our job is really not to be seen, but to just get that work done and keep all of you moving and safe and healthy. So I'm proud to be part of the department. It's a pleasure to do that work, and I'm really proud of what we do. So we have a fun exercise for you. I know you all got some homework, so hopefully you had a chance to look at that. And Ben's going to lead us through that when we're ready. But if any other questions about the department before we move on to that? Yeah.
I was curious with the code reform that's going on. Like, are you guys participating in that?
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
So there's a lot of overlap there because code engineering standards and standards around development really fall under public works. So a lot of times development is constructing things that are in the public right of way, and that's really our purview. And so Ross has been working closely with the code reform team, and we're looking at how that will fold in with our engineering standards and regulations.
I was also curious about the quick build, like the traffic things.
Yeah.
What is that?
So quick build is the delineators and paint that you've seen around town that we're doing small traffic circles or bulb outs or it's a lot of the neighborhood streets.
Kind of the ones with just like the plastic markers
Yep.
instead of. Okay.
Yep, thanks, delineator. So yeah, that's been a really successful program. What we looked at was that with the budgets we have, it's going to take us a long time to do permanent hard infrastructure in a lot of these places. But being able to get out there and do these things pretty quickly and cheaply and get the safety effect that we're looking for. And it also gives us a chance to try it out. So these are good pilots. We can see how it works. We've gone back and adjusted some of those circles to where they're not working well, and that gives us a chance to sort of fine tune it before we actually build something that's more expensive and more permanent.
And in a neighborhood, if somebody was interested in pursuing like an option like that, what's the route to?
Yeah,
get attention
get in
to
touch
that?
with Ben in his office, and we can take a look at those projects. So we have kind of a neighborhood traffic management program that we look at these things, and we go through a process of identifying what the right treatment is and then prioritizing those projects based on needs. So.
And do you just like call up and be like, my neighborhood's perfect?
That's what happens, yeah.
Well,
There's a running list that we keep, and we collect data about speeds and volumes, and we look at crash histories. We look at, one of the things that we've realized over time is that it's called a sight triangle. As you're approaching an intersection, your ability to see the oncoming traffic from the side street is often compromised by parked cars, by people's landscaping, even in our kind of older neighborhoods by houses themselves. And so by installing these, we don't want to put stop signs everywhere because they can lead to noise pollution and increased idling, and people disregard them if they don't see someone coming the other way a lot. The bikers ignore them. There's a whole host of reasons why we don't want to just put stop signs everywhere. So allowing traffic to still flow. So we kind of take all those things. We also don't want to move problems to an adjacent street. So we try and look holistically at a neighborhood. So we're sort of systematically working through neighborhoods in the background, but we also field complaints, and I wouldn't say that necessarily elevates priority, but we certainly add it to the list and start looking at the data and seeing how it fits in.
Do you have a question?
I was wondering what's the best way to kind of stay in the know of what projects are upcoming and are starting? Because I find it's always really fun to learn about what new projects are going on. And is your website regularly updated on the city? Or?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we try to communicate. One of our challenges now is that with the way that news has changed, we don't have one source where we can just put out a press release and it ends up in the Missoulian and everybody reads it. So we're really going a lot of different routes. Lori Hart, sorry I didn't introduce you earlier. Lori Hart is our communications specialist, and she works really hard to get things out on social media. We have a newsletter that goes out with the utility bills. We have our website and our Engage Missoula page. I would say, check in on the Engage Missoula page and sign up for those notifications on projects that you're interested in. That's a really great way to stay involved in a specific project. And then, look for opportunities like the Code Reform Project or our Long-Range Transportation Plan update that's starting up now. Those are great opportunities to get involved at the front end of projects and really have a good opportunity to have your say in what we should be looking at.
And there is a great projects page on our Public Works Department's page, right?
Website, yeah.
Yeah, it has all of our recent projects. All of our
Public
current
Works projects.
So if you want to see a list of all current projects, just do it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Because of the federal infrastructure bill, do we get more money for Missoula?
Yes, absolutely. In a couple different ways.
More projects.
Yeah, so we've been successful with competitive grants. We've also gotten more program funding through that bill. So we're seeing a lot of different ways that money is flowing down to the local level. And kind of importantly, it's coming to us for us to decide how to use it. It's not just being decided at the state level or with the Department of Transportation. So we're getting to apply that to projects that we think are important. Back.
This might be a broad question, but how vulnerable is our aquifer to the impacts of climate change, and how does your department move ahead towards that?
Yeah, you want to take that?
Good answer for that one. We don't really think it's too susceptible, but we want to study it. So we actually just this week are signing a contract for kind of a small study with a local hydrology firm that kind of actually came to us looking for data. And I had put something in our budget and we wanted to do a study, and this guy kind of just came out of the blue and had like a great resume and had some great ideas about some tools that he wants to use. So we're about ready to study that and kind of take a look. You know, we have a lot of static water level data from our wells, and I've looked at it. Some years it's up, some years it's down. No real obvious discernible trends, but we do want to look at it more closely with numerical models. So I think the river leaks a ton of water into the aquifer, and that's just, we use a fair amount. Obviously we pump a lot, and then a lot of it leaks back into the system. But I don't know. For now, I think things are looking pretty good.
So we're fortunate because this aquifer is pretty plentiful, and we have a lot of water rights for it. Some of these other cities, Bozeman, Billings, they really struggle with water capacity. You've probably heard about water restrictions on watering the lawn, things like that, because they really have to conserve water, and they don't have the ability to just pump water from the ground. So it's something that we want to monitor and make sure we're paying attention to what's happening with it, and also making sure that it stays clean and usable for us.
When we talk about aquifer, I'm just wondering about the boundaries. Is it basically the contours of the valley here, or do we know the extent of this aquifer?
Pretty much. In the Hellgate Canyon, there's almost no aquifer there, right? Like the mountain comes down, hits the river, and it's very narrow in the Hellgate Canyon, and then it hits the valley, and the aquifer is the entire, basically, valley floor, and then the aquifer there is no aquifer once you get out to about Alberton, right? Like you drive out there, it's rock down to the river, so that's kind of the Missoula aquifer is. There's an aquifer in Milltown, obviously. It just kind of pinches down, and the water moves pretty darn fast to the Hellgate Canyon. But it's basically the valley floor.
I think there is like a trend around the western half of the United States. So you keep hearing these stories about aquifers that are continuously getting lower and lower and lower, and there's going to be a problem someday. I think we're very fortunate. We haven't seen a trend like that here. We have a pretty constant aquifer.
Yeah, well, seeing no other questions, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll kick off our exercise?
Yeah, I think we'll do 10 minutes just in case. But come back around 7:40, and then we can get going.
Okay, awesome. My name is Ben Weiss. I am a transportation planner for the city. I see some faces I know, but not too many. So thank you for taking time out of your lives to do this. This is, I think, a really great thing. Before we get into the exercise, I wanted to talk just a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing. I didn't make a lot of slides because I didn't want to invite myself to yak, because I can do that. And so I wanted to keep it short. But basically, cities of a certain size are required to maintain a long-range transportation plan and update it every 4 years. And so our last one happened right when the pandemic started. We had our big kickoff open house event, and then the world shut down like a month later. A week later? Okay, and so we did a lot of our public outreach for that plan via Zoom and hybrid meetings. It was kind of challenging. We are just about getting ready to kick off the next long-range transportation plan update. That plan, what's required of us is that we look 25 to 30 years into the future, estimate population growth, estimate the amount of federal transportation dollars that we could expect based on historical trends, and then allocate that money to try and meet a handful of mobility goals. And those are in things like safety and accessibility for people with disabilities, environmental stewardship, economic growth, the sorts of things that you would expect maybe in a plan. Those goals are developed in part by the public. They lean on the city's strategic plan, and they help guide, again, the kind of bigger picture vision of what transportation should look like in the future. We've established goals around mobility and mode split, we call it, the ways that people get around. Basically, at the 2016 plan, we adopted a goal that said by 2045, We want to triple the percentage of people biking and walking for transportation, quadruple the percentage of people using transit. And that goal, again, was largely vetted by the public, and people pushed, the community pushed kind of further than some experts even were willing to go, but it was ambitious, and it's what is guiding a lot of our policy. One of the reasons for it is when you show people the congestion map of what Missoula will look like in 2045, 2050, if we don't change the way people get around. There's large just parking lots instead of streets in a lot of places. We don't have, and when we look at the estimates for how much money we're going to receive, we can't build our way out of it. It doesn't work, first of all, to just add more lanes. Second of all, we don't really have the space. And third, even if we did, I don't know that any of us would want to live in the community that has 8-lane highways and the necessary parking spaces everywhere. So those are kind of what guides our goals at getting more people, the people who want to find other ways to get around, make it as easy and safe, comfortable, convenient for them to do so the people who want or need to drive can still do that. One thing that you might have noticed if you did the homework is that the projects in the list that we ask you to prioritize from are not on some of the busiest roads in town. And if you really looked at the safety maps that were included in your packets, you'd say, gee, the bulk of these crashes are on Reserve Street and West Broadway and Russell, and there's no projects here to address those. Rest assured, we are working on projects on those corridors. We've identified, this is kind of our big picture priorities for the types of federal money. Someone asked about the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. These are the sorts of projects that we've been going after with those federal grants, and we've been successful. We received close to $10 million to reconstruct South Avenue from Reserve out past Fort Missoula and Target Range, and then part of Clements up to North Ave, including trail components and sidewalks, a center turn lane so that people can make safe left turns at Old Fort and at Community Medical Center, so they're having to pass people in the ditch like happens today. So that's one that we were successful in. We're also successful in receiving about $25 million to do the downtown, we're calling it the Downtown Safety and Mobility, or Downtown SAM project, number A on that, or letter A. That includes restoring Front and Main Street back to two-way travel, converting Higgins between Brooks and Broadway to 3 travel lanes, 1 travel lane each direction and a 2-way left turn lane, providing room for safer and better bike lanes. It includes connections down to the trail and down to the park system, both near the library and at Ryman Street, and I think Patty as well. There's also a new ramp off of Bear Tracks Bridge down into Karas Park. And so there's a lot of accessibility benefits there, a lot of benefits for, a lot of kind of public comment revolved around, well, biking versus other modes. We don't quite see it that way. We see major benefits for drivers with this project, including we get to remove the left turn prohibition that currently exists at morning, noon, and evening rush hour currently on Higgins. Those turns are going to be safer, and it's something that we put a lot of study into to see if this will work, and we're pretty confident that it will. We've received planning money to look at Brooks, the red one there, a project to look at the potential of running bus rapid transit there. And Russell Street is a project that we're working in partnership with MDT to implement. It's been a priority since the mid-90s, and we've been saving portions of our federal allocation every year since then, and we're able to bite off chunks at a time. The first phase did the bridge and the Broadway intersection to the Milwaukee Trail Crossing and Dakota Street. Phase 2, which I imagine construction will start 2025, 2026, probably.
2026 or 2027.
Okay, yeah, it gets pushed out a little bit. That will continue all the way down to Mount Avenue from where it is. So it'll go through the 3rd Street intersection. And so there will be opportunities to weigh in on that project. We received a grant, a planning study grant to look at safety on Reserve Street. And we have a grant that we're waiting to hear on for Highway 200 through East Missoula. That project would include widening out the street underneath the railroad trestle, the pinch point there, to allow some sort of trail or bike lane and sidewalk combo to go through there, and then convert the East Missoula section into like a downtown street with lighting and boulevard trees and sidewalks and crosswalks and bike lanes, and have it really support the kind of vibrancy that East Missoula deserves. So we've done a feasibility, we received a technical assistance grant for letter H up there to look at different projects on the north side, a potential new interchange at the highway where Coal Mine Road goes under to the dump. That would be potentially where it would be. We looked at whether or not that is feasible from a technical perspective. We looked at ways to come, if that were to connect, could there be another bridge over the railroad tracks? What would that look like? So these bigger picture projects, the ones on the main streets, we are working on those. That isn't what we asked you guys to look at for us. Where we need help and where we thought that you guys would enjoy looking at these projects and eventually, in a few minutes arguing with each other about them, are for the slightly smaller scale capital improvement projects. And so this is a list, what you guys got, the 10 or 11 that are on the list of homework that you received, were selections from the 95 to 100 projects that we have on our list right now to fund at the city level. Some of the projects on the list could be grant funded. Some of them we could maybe accomplish some of the goals through quick build, but these are projects that have been lingering for a while, identified by community members, exist in our plans, and we know there's need for them. And so in 2019, we developed a scoring rubric, which we shared with you, a slightly simplified version shared with you guys, that looks at the criteria of do these projects conform with our plans, or how well do they conform with our plans? What connectivity benefits do they provide? What access benefits do they provide? What sorts of destinations do they serve? What safety benefits does the project provide? Both is there a safety issue it's addressing, and does the project actually address it? We look at equity as well, and that is, it means kind of a lot of things to a lot of different people. The way that transportation equity, and that was also one of the maps that was in the handout, that looks at percentage of zero-car households. It looks at percentage of households with people living with disabilities. It looks at people who are too young or percentage of households with people that are too old or too young to drive, and looks at access to sidewalks, trails, bike lanes, bus stops, things like that. And so City Council, we brought this kind of idea to City Council, and they said, hey, this looks great. We want you to double the scores for safety and equity, because that's what's important to us. And so that's what we gave you. We gave you these 5 criteria. We have some additional criteria that we look at. We look at leverage with other projects. So if Logan and Ross's teams are doing a sewer project, it might be a great time, and they're digging up the road anyway, it might be a great time to move one of our projects around, so that helps build in a score. We also look at project readiness. So a project on a small local street is a lot more that we just have an idea, hey, a sidewalk should go here. That project is a lot more ready than the same idea, hey, we need a sidewalk on a street that the state owns. And most of the main streets in town are owned by the state. So you guys have been assigned tables, so the instructions for activity, we're already done with number 1, so you can pat yourselves on the back for that. How many people actually took the packet home and read it and scored each project? Holy cow, that's fantastic. This is the first time we've done something like this, so this is really exciting to see. What we want you guys to do as groups at your table is compare your notes, compare your scores on these projects, and try to identify what you think are the top 3 priorities. Again, all of these projects we think have merit. When you guys have done that, we have a, oh, this is the old version of the,
Well, maybe we can make it.
the Menti. Okay, all right. So we have a website to go to called menti.com where you can enter in what your top projects are, and then it'll tell us on the screen what the tables come up with. And then we'll come together and have conversation about why you made the choices that you did, and what you prioritized, and why certain projects either rose to the top or fell in the rankings for you. I hope that we gave you enough information to have good discussion around this. It's a challenge for us. We try and use data as much as possible, but at the same time, Brian and I can look at the same data and have different answers about assign a project a different score. And so this is something that we're working on regularly, kind of refining how are we scoring projects. We get to do about, I think the slide said that we're actively working on 15 or so right now from our list. That's true. Some of them are halfway through construction. Some of them we're beginning to do design concepts, so there's a kind of a process that we follow. Again, some of them are more complex than others, but it's all of these projects, again, have merit, require some amount of significant capital investment. We left the funding sources out of this for you. Just, again, we gave you 11, we have, let's say we have the money to do 3. Which ones should we do on the list? Yeah.
So the main goal of this is to help you understand what we go through, what the council has to go through when we get to budget season, and we have a small amount of money. We might be able to construct one project on our list of 95 or 100 any given year. And so how do you pick that one project? And that's the challenge, and we hope this exercise helps you think through the process that we've identified to help make those decisions to achieve our goals as effectively as possible. So hopefully that you can have those conversations about, you get to pick a small number of projects knowing that that's all we have the money for.
I would just add that we're interested to hear what you think about how we're selecting these projects. Is there something that we're not considering that we should be? So give thought to that as we go through the exercise. And we are going to be actually updating this priority list here fairly soon, and this is really good feedback for all of us. So, I mean, we're going to have our ears open and be listening. We don't get this chance to interact with the public on this question this openly that often. So.
That's very true. Any questions on the exercise before we set you loose? And we'll be walking around and chatting with you as well at your tables.
So one of our projects or things we're going to look at is Scott Street. And that you mentioned the Worthing Turner project, which I understand is going to start this summer.
Mm-hmm.
So could you give us a quick overview of how you came to decide that one over all these other 95 for this year?
Why Turner Warden is happening?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, back in 2019, when we had 95 projects and we scored them all, that one is somewhere in the top 15 to 18 projects scoring. I don't remember offhand which number it is. It scored high because it was in our plan. It was identified in the plans that we needed a good east-west connection in the north side. Turner Street is identified in city ordinance as a truck route. It's the main east-west street through the north side for dump access from Orange Street. It doesn't have sidewalks. There's a crash history that includes kids getting hit on bikes. The equity piece, the north side, is kind of isolated from the rest of town and doesn't have a lot of connections and a lot of opportunities, and so improving transportation in that neighborhood elevates the score. The leverage score helped a little bit. We knew that something on Scott was coming. I don't know that we knew exactly how much development was coming, but we thought that if there was a safe other way out of the north side than just going over Scott Street, that would be helpful, it would mitigate some of the impact to the neighborhood. What are some of the other pieces? The north side is densifying. There's a lot of infill development happening there, and so I think that's
some of the pressures on Scott Street weren't really there when we were established. I mean, it takes 3 to 4 years sometimes to get these projects through design and funded. So when we were starting that project, like the whole Rivara project wasn't even, I don't think it had even hit it wasn't even a thing yet. So it's not like we had that sort of development pressure happening on Scott Street, and so it wasn't exactly, like we might have made a different decision today than we would have made 5 years ago, but it's hard to anticipate.
Does the length of time that this a certain project need, the length of time that's been on the list, does that play into it? Does the condition of the pavement have any?
That's also, it does. That's part of the scores that we didn't, the simple version that we gave you guys doesn't include that, but it's also part of the leverage. I mentioned sewer, but also if Brian's gonna repave it, that might play into it too, if it's gonna suit him, especially if there's no curb and gutter, to help manage the storm water, he doesn't really wanna repave it because the asphalt will start crumbling on the sides, and so if he says, hey, the rest of the street's in bad condition, it would be great if this one could be bumped up the list a little bit. We certainly take that into consideration.
If I could add to that, can I put a plug in for any of the projects that you're aware that the streets are in poor condition? Much appreciated.
This is just kind of a broad question. I know that some of these projects are in tandem with development projects that we know are happening. And I know in other cities around the nation, it seems like more costs are put on developers as opposed to the city. So how is it decided here, kind of what the developer pays for, what the city pays for?
I might let Aaron or Jeremy speak more to that. Developers certainly are responsible for building the public infrastructure along their development. And then they also pay impact fees, transportation impact fees, to help mitigate some of the impacts to the rest of the network. There are limitations where that money and how that money can be spent. But we do recapture some of it. And some of the projects, like I want to go back to this slide. The only one I didn't talk about, I think, on this whole list is out in the Swipticane area by the airport, where the city recently, we received, again, federal funding to connect England Boulevard out to George Elmer and extend Mary Jane north and south to connect Broadway to Mullen. That we didn't receive as much money as we had asked for, and so as development fills in out there, we built the primary road connection, the initial road connection and the gutter and curb, and then the development is going to build the sidewalk, the bike lanes, and plant the trees. And so that's one way that that's happening. But is there more to how development pays for?
Well, the challenge with assessing development costs is it has to be proportional to their impact. And so we can't legally assess them more cost than what they're causing. So what we try to do is strike that right balance. So the impact fees take care of a portion of that. That really provides funding for the system capacity that we provide. But then we also require them to make improvements that are specific to their development. So it might be a new street or a new traffic signal or adding sidewalks to an area or to the adjacent land adjacent to the street that they're developing. So we have to maintain that proportionality. So we can't always charge as much as we'd like to, but we do try to make sure that development is paying their fair share.
Is there a way to like phase the development so that it aligns with the infrastructure? Like, I mean, in line with, with these different development tranches?
I think the Swipticane area is our kind of first attempt at that in some ways, seeing what, how development fills in along that to get the full facilities. You can't really limit, there are regulations around private development, but we can't tell people who they own the land and they're allowed to do what they bought with it per zoning code and things. We can't tell them to wait necessarily.
But good planning goes a long way. When we know what they're going to need for development as it occurs, then we can ask them to pay their share, a portion of it. And so sometimes if we have a project that's already part of our CIP, we could just ask them to pay a portion of the cost. And then there's other times where we may ask the developer to make the improvements and we'll pay a portion of the cost because we don't have it in our program already.
We also, historically, we've only evaluated development for the impacts of vehicles on the roadway. And so when they're proposing a development, a new subdivision, they submit, and it's gonna generate more than 200 trips a day. They need to produce a report that shows where are those trips going and, and what percentage is going down this street versus this way, and what are the impacts of the signals, the nearest signalized intersections. Recently, we've begun asking developers to look at the non-motorized connections as well and impacts, and perhaps most importantly, safety. So not just the traffic volumes, but what are the implications to safety. So an example there is with some of the new development at Grant Creek, we, through conversation back and forth with the developer, realized that development, maybe the volumes weren't going to have a huge impact, but it might really impact the ability to make left turns out of like where Mackenzie River and the gas station and Starbucks are. And so how do we work on a project to make that section of street safer? And so we're trying to partner with them to figure that out. What? Yeah, let's get started. Unless there are any more questions, we can just get started and you guys can start arm wrestling over your priorities.
If anyone doesn't have a packet, yeah, Lori has it over there.
I think so. I think that's a good place to start.
How do you want to try?
Where we have Yeah, that's a good point. That's start at the end. Save some time.
How do we find the other version?
You shouldn't have to just read it.
Yeah, I'll say my number one project I saw really cool.
It has this, it just doesn't have the...
That's
Oh, okay, yeah.
Doesn't help that like there's a large homeless population right there now too.
We found it for some reason.
Comes in for bikers. It's really troublesome right
That's the results. Exactly. Thank you.
Looking at the, it's just a question. I don't know.
There's some I ran by that I have questions about.
I don't know.
It's a traffic circle. Okay, so it's, the question is, you've got backwards right now. Long wait times are like in California there. Super long wait times. Long wait times for pedestrians there. And what I notice, my wife tells me this all the time, is people get tired of waiting. They push the button the entire way and they slip. They just jaywalk. And so the cars are there, there's no pedestrians anymore. You're waiting for the light to turn on. And that happens all the time. So my thought, the question about that is that it's definitely a high priority thing. How would that work if you come out from downtown going west in the afternoon? It's a very solid street of cars, and the way you see it in circles all the time, if they're going and these people coming because of the
also coming this way, are they gonna have to wait always for this to clear before they can go around the circle on the
Yeah, I was curious about
so is it gonna be the same effect for trying to make that turn? And the same thing that I know is coming this way for these people that have to. I do agree that this merge point here is kind of, I mean, this is kind of clean, especially with the position. My question is, really, do they expect it to actually traffic?
It feels like the bigger benefits are California Street and Tool, right? Broadway is it almost
It's going to be what it is.
in general, I think that like the size and scale you see around that seems to me potentially you have more variety of
The question is, since there's probably not going to be some lights at these crosswalks, and if so, you have to stop people at the end of the circle, or at the end of the circle, so the pedestrians go first. That's the other question. I couldn't tell all this.
I just remember historically, it's just like there's so much it's always been a section of town that's been
It's just it's a dicey intersection when there's snow.
One thing I do like about this redesign and using a traffic circle or a roundabout is that it does bring the eye level of the driver back down to street level where the pedestrians are.
It's going to slow people.
And I think that's really important for an intersection where pedestrians are in place.
Because this is the California Street Bridge. And that's getting more traffic. Because people not only coming from California Street, but like they come around the river trail and they go down Dakota and then come over the California Street Bridge and go over here to get to downtown. It's a couple of miles down the bridge next to Brownsville. They go all the way down to Orange if you have to. So, are there going to be California Street traffic circle? Is this going to be signalized for pedestrians?
roundabouts don't always signal pedestrian crossing.
That's a pedestrian intersection.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we were looking at that project is getting across that intersection I thought is really challenging.
And then, is it going to be people coming from downtown to try to get through this? Well, there's people in there's a solid street coming one way or the other during rush hour. Is it still going to be expected? It's still going to be there, or is it going to help? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I think you're still going to see periods of congestion during the rush hour. In general, I think it'll look better than this. That westbound Broadway movement is going to be affected by the left turns that are going around the Tool. Because in the roundabout, they're going to have a priority. So you may see that leg back up when there's a tourist. But it also tends to be, it's a little bit time of day independent, so westbound movement is really an afternoon movement. So we'll have to model that more and see how it's going to work. Another lanes around about. It's sort of right in between sort of a single lane and a multi-lane roundabout.
I I think the traffic might be mitigated a little bit by that Russell Street light as well. Because the traffic backs up there, and what does get through that light, I think, goes through this really quick. Do you have any examples of any other roundabouts in the city that see this kind of volume of vehicle traffic?
That aren't right off the highway?
I was trying to think if I could think of any.
Yeah, those are probably close. I mean, Broadway is probably 15,000 cars a day. So it's getting up there. The new roundabouts we built out on Mullen are probably, we don't quite have the traffic volume there yet, but they're designed to have the traffic volume.
So in general, these traffic studies are
and they're great for traffic volume. That's the reason that roundabouts operate so safely. You may have crashes, but they tend to be really rare. You don't get the 45 mile an hour T-bone crash that you see at a signal.
Do you think of like a traffic circle in town where there's so much pedestrian? I think a lot of the traffic circles I've seen are like places where it's full of traffic. There's not a lot of people walking. The only one I can think of is the one on Hayden's, where it's like tagged area. It's the only one I see where people are walking.
A lot of pedestrians.
That brings up a good point. So, the other week, the folks from the MRA, you notice projects on has anybody even gone to like so pedestrians are crossing right through there between those apartments there, going back and forth to working on the design right now.
Yeah. We haven't talked about that a lot. The problem with having a pedestrian overpass is it actually makes the pedestrian walk. It's hard to get people to walk out of direction. The reason you see people crossing right there at the top is because they're just going straight across back and forth where they want to go, versus walking down the block to the signal and crossing a safer location. So, you see some places where they put in these overpasses and people won't use them, and it's just too far in the direction. Las Vegas did a whole bunch of these. You actually walk, you gotta walk out of direction, up the stairs, and across the stairs, back down the stairs, and back on the sidewalk again.
So if people don't use it, it defeats the whole intention of it.
It sort of discourages people to walk. I think what we want to do with this intersection is just make it easier, calm the traffic, make it easier to get across without having to wait 2 more minutes for the light to change. Make it safer to cross in the most direct way.
Well, I got Sky
We don't have money to do a lot for the bridge, but one of the things we're looking at is that walkway. Whether it makes sense to have a line to a bikeway on one side of the bridge instead of separated bikeways. That bikeway being buffered a little bit so it feels a little more comfortable. That's one thing we've kind of gone back and forth on the advantages and disadvantages of that.
I see a lot of people just get on their bikes and walk over that.
It's a really challenging hill. It's a steep hill. Yeah, that's an entirely. I think it was challenging for folks when they first went in because it's kind of complicated to use. And, that one's a little over-designed for the amount of traffic we actually have. Yeah, it's designed for traffic volumes that haven't shown up yet. This one, I think what you'll see here, you can't really see it on the drawing, but it's going to have a couple of lanes on the Broadway lanes and single lanes on the other side streets. So it's sort of in between.
So it's going to be a straight through lane.
You know, one of the nice things, I don't know if you've ever been over there on California Street, cider place, getting out on California Street, you can really only turn right. You don't allow a lot of turn, and it's roundabout, it's full access in all directions.
So you're trying to get Broadway to make a left in California too. That light is just
That one is painful too, it's red. I ignore that one on my bike.
Just talking earlier, my wife drives she talks about pedestrians who get they press the button, they get up on the change, split or J's cars are still there while the lights red. Because the pedestrians are long gone.
There's a daycare over there somewhere to the north of Broadway, and I see this troop of little kids. It's like 12 little ducklings are all wearing yellow vests. And they get across Broadway and go down to the park and river.
It's nice to see that bridge when it opens
So I think we were all priority projects. Can you just say
I have one street, Craig, for sure. It does not have
So that's something that's come up on some of these other ones. I feel like when I fix they should have driven around it too long because that's getting more and more busy. With all those units going in on the north side there, that's because they're all units going, and that's going to garbage trucks every day. It's one of my peeves. They're talking about fixing the part that doesn't really fix the worst part of Wyoming. It's not even part of the discussion, which is the part by the trailers. They're flooding the food area. It's too narrow. It's on the street park. When it snows, it's nice because the plows push the snow up against cars and people put mirrors on to see.
What did you have as your top three, Chris?
Purpose. Mostly good for some safety reasons. It's, like I said, I drove all these today. The pavement at Curtis is by far the worst. It's got frost heaves, it's got potholes. It's too narrow. Large vehicles cannot turn right, say from Wyoming onto Curtis, or any of those other streets with those toll bells. The right of way is too narrow for a large vehicle to make a right turn. If a vehicle is coming up and it's so it's all coming this way, you can't make a right turn. The sidewalk, which creates safety issues. It gets a lot of traffic to and from the park. It's like a bus route, so the kids are there in the morning. It's kind of alignments are changed. You have to watch. You're watching alignments, and you're watching the car. it's only 25 miles most of the time. It's still not even safe to bed. I don't think it's safe. Plus, it's been 20 years.
Yeah, they do know the existing right-of-ways constraints over there.
Yeah, it's funny because River Road, especially since Russell, really the only way out of the road is to take Curtis down the road, River to take it to Russell's or you go down to Wyoming and turn left on So your choices are Curtis or Wyoming. So two streets that are this rush hour, you've got buses using the people trying to get and it's ice. So I feel like there's a need there, and it's mostly for safety reasons.
So I use Curtis
That's the other thing, traffic times turning right for River on Federal Reserve can take a while. So a lot of people go down to Third just to catch the light. So they get to Federal Reserve. My main thing is safety condition of the road. We've seen it, it's been.
I've seen these should not.
Well, I had Scott Street because I think longer term that's going to be, that needs to be addressed. I know they've got a lot of the bridge there, there's another street right at the very bottom of the bridge, they have a lot of accidents there. There's something with that
Cooley? I think that's what it is. That's like where they're going to have roundabouts. Which I thought was strange. I thought it would be on turn, which would be the second.
Yeah, because it's
kind of a bigger street.
My guess, that's why I asked him earlier about Worthing, because Worthing is one of the streets, like if you're coming down Scott, you go trying to find a map. So Worthing is so there's Turner, there's Worthing. So I guess the idea is that you would come off the Orange Street roundabout and go along here to the and it's funny that that's a trick route because that's a residential street. But up here on Turner, especially off the roadway,
That's where we're I ride that route on my motorcycle quite a bit, and it's real bad.
So that's my guess, is they want people another way to get in. But I, just from access, for those people. And it's funny that they mentioned, because I think there's going to be development up here, especially if they get a freeway ramp that line there. Just people decide to sell because one of my neighbors brought up about their great neighbors they want to get in early, catch appreciation, so they bought it. Anyway, it's so personally, it's pretty good shape. It's not. And Scott Street's I just picked that because it's going to be a major arterial. Time to fix that is earlier. I know that they have trouble people coming off the bridge into school, drive school hours, school.
biased about Cruz, but I think because they don't have River Road out here. Most of my neighbors are squawking about River Road. It's a perfect tie into the trail, the river trail. It's not on anybody's radar. It's,
So what were your well, mine was Broadway tour, and then I had the Orange Street Craig signal. I was concerned in general though with Orange Street because it's just so backed up, but that's just because it goes to 4 lanes and 2 lanes and we don't have, I don't know how we're going to solve that.
my thing on Orange Craig, the main purpose of that, the main benefit to me would be making a left turn at Craig onto Orange, which is almost impossible very easy.
It's either way. Yeah. From where I'm coming from, I try to get a left down there, and you have to like mad dash far down the Orange Street Bridge and pick your
Get
spot.
way too aggressive.
Oh yeah.
But so somebody could say, well, there's a pedestrian road under the street there, or pedestrian tunnel. So that's not there again, it's a place where there's going to be a lot more people.
There is everyone can it's got like completely being modeled and redone. It's got a giant center now, so that's going to attract a ton more people to there.
Because coming from here, especially turning onto the bridge, is it's really twitchy sometimes. And of course, people like to
Yeah, it sounds like the safety aspect of this Orange Street Craig is very interesting.
So what was your third?
My third one I had a tie actually between California Street.
Yeah,
I got very greedy and I put it in the Milwaukee Trail too, just because I love the Milwaukee Trail. I think it's an equity thing that for the city to have this giant connected trail system. Yeah, I mean, I really just think it's a very unique cool thing to have here, and it's something that people who like to bike and run really
So I wonder if that's one that has potential for grant rails to trails.
Because it definitely has something different on its list. Completely different plan. There's like all these I had Scott as 4. Broadway and Orange were all great. I had California Street.
I'd like to hear your opinions on, for example, Green and Duncan up there. It seems to me that that one was primarily for bikers. There's already a bike lane where there are some bikers around. Is there something the roadway is in good shape?
I was going to say the road is fine. It's extremely wide.
So that would seem to me just primarily for bikes, and it's bike races and for smaller.
Seemed like it was served pretty well.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Relatively low traffic.
What about the Milwaukee Trails?
We were just talking about that. I actually had that as my number 3, but it was kind of just because of this equity. I think the more we increase that tree releases and a bunch of nice things, it sells itself to people who want to live here. It's very unique. I thought it was valuable about it. It's not a safety concern. Probably doesn't eliminate that much traffic in other places, but there's some new factors.
So I say they need to get grant funding.
Yeah, I did.
I put that up, it'd be nice to have.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. Yeah, I think this is a great. That could be fun.
Okay, so on that California street that you're looking at.
Yeah, I think that is yeah, because I think there's so much construction happening around there, and it's really for fun to get. If you look at the roads that are all around it, they've all been worked on. It's this kind of connection.
So that instead of, I think we're going to this, it seems to me that we're putting it out there and there's a crossover. And it takes care of that.
Third Street's right here.
This is, you're coming up 3rd Street. This is the really super narrow part, which I don't think they can do anything about. So we're just trying to talk about clean water intersections. And then I think this is first. Instead of right now, let's see if I can find another opposite maps. Here's one right now. So it's 3rd Street. It's a really super narrow. It's coming up and it makes that turn. And this is a wild intersection right here. And I drove that today. And I really get moving. It looks like what they're planning on doing is coming straight towards that Dakota. This there's it's an maybe straight to the river.
Oh wow, yeah.
So up here in Idaho, this has all been paved over, new water mains and everything. And I believe this was redevelopment. This is all. It was
First one's Broadway Tool, like we were talking about. The second one's Scott Street. The third one is Orange Street.
Yeah, I think that Orange Street, California, that safety. Puts it a little higher priority for me than Scott Street.
Yeah, get a case for
All right. Has everyone had a chance to enter their scores? No.
Where's the form?
All right, we'll give you 2 more minutes and then
Can you go back to the QR code?
Sure.
Oh, we're supposed to upload it to them? Is that what we're supposed to?
And maybe I wasn't clear, we're hoping that a table would enter their kind of collective score.
Which tables haven't entered?
These guys have, anyone else have not entered?
I got it for this.
I want to have it just to have it.
Oh.
So you're saying if I go to
year and clerk. All 6 have entered, huh? All right. Wow, we have some clear winners. Did everyone enter? Did everyone rank all 11, or did some people stop after like? After 4. Okay. They just did 3. All right. So maybe that's skewing some of the scores a little bit, but did every table rank our top 3 as the top 3?
Yes.
Wow. I guess I was expecting maybe a little more competition. But,
People have spoken, get on it.
These are all HRCIs.
Yeah.
Great, very good. They're all very good stuff with that.
We're an even distribution of the city.
I mean, were any of those a surprise that they ranked in the top 3?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I didn't know it. It's helpful to know that maybe we're on the right track. 'Cause all 3 of these are funded to some extent, and will happen probably sooner than any of the other projects on the list. And so that is good to know. There are some that might happen if they're creative funding sources. Lower Miller Creek, there's a development that is going to pay for the vast majority of improvements there. So I think that maybe that one will happen sooner than the scores might suggest on this.
And I think these would actually be I was just going to check, I think these might be the highest scoring projects in this list based on our own criteria and scores.
Yeah.
Even though I live 3 houses from number 11, it was also almost my last one. But Russell and I had a really nice talk, and I think there's a compelling argument to mimic Missoula Ave in that stretch.
Speed bump.
With a couple speed bumps, and maybe like just some, I mean, I could just spray paint and put a reflective thing up. But I know we've talked about that extensively and we have with a lot of our neighbors too.
Yeah, fire has some.
We know fire doesn't like it, but based on what I learned from fire last week, that is like the least amount of calls that they have. So.
Okay, well maybe there's room for conversation there.
So I mean, I just think what was the terminology that you used? Quick build option.
Yeah, it's so far quick build options have been less. We have fewer of them on routes that are designated fire routes.
Sure.
But they're it's something that we continue to build our relationship with the fire department and talk to each other about what's working in other places and see if we can.
Going north isn't really a problem, as we know, because of the stop sign at Lolo, but going south is. So maybe it's just one speed bump at the soccer field.
Oh, as you enter, there is a
as you
feedback
come
sign.
down.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The flasher's great, but that's the only major issue.
Okay.
The people going 60 miles an hour down the hill.
Yeah,
through the 25.
that happens.
Yeah, a lot.
We did have a couple questions to kind of spur discussion a little bit, but I talked to you about some of these at the tables that I went to. But did the scoring criteria make it easier or harder to prioritize projects based on what you know about getting around town? Easier?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's good to know. Did it align to the criteria and data, like with a gut check? Did those make sense to you as what you thought would be high priorities as well? Or were you surprised at your scores based on what the data showed?
I was surprised at the consensus, like at our table, because some of them I noticed, one of them is the Orange Street. I live towards that, right there, like I use it all the time. So I knew I had a bias towards it, but to hear people who don't necessarily live right there also prioritize that one high, I didn't expect that, because I thought my bias was kind of leading in those numbers to be higher.
Okay. I see you're really trying to egg her on to talk. What did you?
I think I just have a completely kind of different definition of equity than the ones you guys use, and I was thinking a lot about, I guess, areas of town that aren't utilized by a lot of people, and probably like the importance it is to those people that live near it, and scored those a little higher probably than I should have.
Well, there's no
in my
right or wrong.
opinion, I
Yeah.
scored them right.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer necessarily. We follow metrics, available data, but I was telling one table that we try and have multiple people look at the entire list and score these together because we have these guidelines. Yeah, a higher equity score should be closer to 10 than a lower equity score, but my 8 might be Jeremy's 6. And so how do we account for that? And it's kind of similar to this, that you get a table together and you kind of average them and figure it out. The other thing to note is that one project scores a 47 total and another one scores a 48 total. That doesn't automatically mean that we do the 48 before we do the 47. I mentioned there are lots of other reasons that we might, pavement condition might elevate one that's a little bit lower, leverage with development, leverage with water or sewer, things like that. Again, project readiness, maybe someone asked how long something's been on the list. Maybe not how long it's been on the list plays into directly, but if something's been on the list a while, certainly staff members have some ideas and maybe even drawings about what they think that project's going to look like. Maybe the right-of-way has been surveyed to know how much room do we have to build in, and so those sorts of things can start to increase that readiness score a little bit.
I have a random question related to scoring. At your table in the middle, you had a tie that you wanted to break. How did you end up differentiating, breaking that tie when you felt like you had 2 equally scored projects?
But we ended up relooking at the equity and then safety as well, and using that as some guidance. So I think we just hold the.
We know that you guys had some different priorities at the start. Did other tables have kind of wildly different scores coming in, or were people fairly aligned at your table?
Our table is remarkably aligned.
They say great minds think alike.
That's what I told that table.
Yeah.
Ours were pretty aligned as well, but we discussed our methodologies to getting there at first, and our approaches were completely different. I mean, almost couldn't be more different. So it was a good jumping off point. We just agreed that since we had really different ideologies and they came to the same place, we essentially averaged our scores. And they pretty much told the story. A couple hiccups, but nothing that wasn't really easy to move past when we just kind of looked at it a little more clearly. So yeah, I don't know if we were super aligned.
Okay, can you tell us what those different approaches were?
Yeah, I took a very objective approach. I didn't look at the maps. I tried not to even think about the region it was in, but I looked at all the criteria. I started with which I looked through and decided what was the most amount of one certain metric, and I would give that one the 10 or the 20, the top score, and none of the others the top. And then I would, if it got a 10 and it met 5 requirements and that was the top, then I guess for the rest of them I could rank them at each part of the metric is meeting, that's 2 points apiece. So then I could score the rest of them, and then I totaled them. And then,
Yes, we basically crossed the row for each scoring criteria, and I looked at each project individually and went down the column and ranked them based on the project.
Okay, interesting.
And then I added in some creative math. Because I wanted to also factor in volume, because I thought there was a correlation too between volume and safety, and so I just felt it was missing. So my numbers were all higher than theirs because I was weighting more, adding more points in because of volume. But in the end, we aligned on our top picks.
All right, yeah, you hit on something that we're toying with is, does volume need its own criteria? We have thought that it's addressed in safety, it's addressed in the connectivity piece. One thing that I clearly did not explain well enough is the concept of isolated routes. Those are streets especially in the River Road neighborhood or up into canyons and valleys, that it's kind of the one way in, one way out, that those score a little bit higher than a street that might be able, on a fixed grid that can diffuse a lot of traffic. And so that's one way that we account for volume also, but we did include the number because that just wanted you to be aware of how busy these streets are.
I think volume's kind of a big deal, but for me in my safety grading, a lot of it was the volume to crash ratio. So that's how it played in for me.
Okay, yeah, and that's another one.
Because something could have a ton of volume but almost no crashes, and I was like, well, maybe it's pretty safe. Or really low volume, but why are there so many crashes? Why is it the same at a 2,000 as a 15,000? Like that needs help.
Yeah.
Right? So I was kind of doing that math.
Okay.
I have a question. Are school bus routes part of your consideration of ranking these things?
Not necessarily, because they change every year. There's certainly proximity to schools change things. Projects within a half mile of school where kids are not eligible to ride the bus, that plays into it. But the school bus routes themselves, not only do they change every year, but Beach and MCPS don't share them with us for like security reasons. And so we can show them maps, and they tell us if something that we're showing them includes a route or not, and might make suggestions to us, but we don't get a list of where all of their routes are.
I have a question. We haven't talked about the cost of any of these projects. Like, to what extent do you, because it seems like these are all like the ideal designs for the projects. To what extent does that factor into prioritization? And then if there's something that's like, this really needs to be fixed, but this is an expensive way to do it, do you ever take, here's a plan B that's cheaper that we might be able to slip?
We do, and we have a lot of heartburn about it, and there's public process involved, and usually we argue with each other internally, and it does happen, and it's and what gets cut out of a project? Is it the traffic calming features? Is it the boulevard trees? Do we narrow the sidewalk in locations? Do we do we make it a conventional bike lane versus a buffered bike lane, or how do we make those compromises? And it's not, no project is identical necessarily, and so there's no great way to do that, but we're again actively working on ways to have a transparent decision-making process when that sort of thing happens.
The other thing that we intentionally didn't include this because we didn't want it to be too much to try to grapple with in a short period of time, but like I was explaining to this table, that there's sort of an opportunity cost of projects that if this top ranking project costs $50 million, the next 3 or 4 top ranking projects are the same cost total. It may be better to do those next 3 or 4 projects, but at least having the ranking allows us to evaluate that. Like, what does it cost us to do this project in terms of what we're not doing? And that comes into with lower scoring projects that are high cost. You can show, well, we could do this project, but it means we can't do these 10 other high scoring projects that cost less. And so this process helps us make that decision, or helps City Council make that decision. I mean, ultimately we don't get to decide, but when it comes to the budget, it's really helpful.
One of the ways we put this list together too is that most of these projects are in the like $1.5 to $3 million range. There's a couple outliers. The trail extension is significantly more because it involves a bridge, like a 4-span bridge over the river. The signal at Orange Craig is probably a little less, but maybe not once you get into the curb work and the hillside and things that need to be done. So, but they're ballpark. We tried to keep apples to apples a little bit on this.
Does the city council often just reprioritize things after you get your list all in order? I mean, do they have the authority to pull one out and say, no, this is the top?
Maybe they could. They haven't.
I mean, at the end of the day, they decide. And this process has helped us sort of keep things on track, because what we do is, it's often that a city council person will bring a project and say, how about this one? I want to do this. Right. And then we say, well, there's 95 projects. How are we going to rank this? And does it?
Because they're advocating for their.
Yeah, is it enough to jump the line? And it does happen. We have new projects come up that will get in line sooner. Orange Craig is a good example. That one moved up the list because we got the funding figured out. We also had a fatal accident there, and that one became a higher priority. So yeah, they can change it. We revisit the priority every year. And then to go back to your question, you know, I said earlier, there's 18 projects that we're actively working on. What that means is there's, in our 5-year CIP, which is, so we've programmed funding for the next 5 years, we've got 18 projects that we plan to build. So we have to fit all of that within the funding that we have. And so we're actively working on developing those projects, but there may be a point where one of those projects drops off the list because a new project comes in.
And we often have to split projects into phases based on not just what we have in that 5-year window, but what we have in a single year to spend. We might not be able to do the whole project, a sidewalk project. We divide it into 2 phases or more, and we get the first phase done, we get the second phase done, and then the third phase, we look at it and we're like, oh, well, just this phase doesn't, yes, the whole connectivity of that route was nice, but this phase is largely complete already, or maybe it doesn't have the equity score that another project has, and we haven't done a project in 5 years in the River Road neighborhood, and maybe phase 3 of that first project needs to sit for a little while.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, maintenance, my projects that I want are all in the bottom half. But I wanted to ask the group, have any of you ever called the street division or complained to your friends and family about a street with poor condition and wonder why it's never fixed? Have any of you experienced that or consider part of that?
I can give you Brian's cell phone number if you have
And you're welcome to it. You folks pay for this phone, you're welcome to use it. My cell phone is always available. But for example, have any of you driven on North Avenue prior to last summer between Garfield and Johnson? Remember what terrible shape that was? I have been getting beat up on that street for like 5 or 6 years before we were finally able to get it. And people ask me, why don't you fix this? It's just potholes. Well, part of this whole process and the frustration from the maintenance side is I see this list of these upcoming projects. And I say, okay, when are you guys gonna do North Ave? When are you gonna do this CIP? Well, we don't know, Brian. I said, well, the asphalt's falling apart, I'm getting pounded, the public's upset, I gotta do something. So that all factors into these too, like 23rd. Anybody driven up 23rd lately? It's horrible. But there's this big project hanging out there. I've had 23rd on my list for probably 15, 18 years. And I've been hesitant to invest any of your taxpayer dollars in any large degree in asphalt. It's just been temporary patches or little overlays to fix bad spots. But does it make sense for me to go and do a big full mill and overlay if this project could happen in 5 years or 10 years? Have any of you thought of that? Or, I mean, and it's hard sometimes to tell that to the public. Say, look, there's this project coming out here. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on the street. I know it's bad. But then they say, well, when are you going to do the project? I don't know. So that's part of it too. And I don't know if the scoring criteria specifically mentions that sort of thing, but I was curious if anyone had any thoughts about that.
I mean, leverage does, there's in my notes field, it's like pavement condition is this, Brian says it needs,
it needs to be like
3 to 5 years.
Well, like Brian on North Second, which we take a lot to get over to our side of the rattlesnake, they had it closed for a long time because of the water project, and that street, it was like, 50% potholes.
Terrible.
Like my 10-year-old actually made signs and hung them up so people knew the potholes were so bad because you could see people's cars like about to break going into them. So they ripped up so much of the road and then just repaved the sections they ripped up. Yeah, just repaved the trench, and we're sitting there like, oh my gosh, 1/3 to 2/3. Why is this entire road not been fixed instead of these bad little patches? And then I thought, well, maybe they're hoping for some North Second project in the downtown master plan, and they'll do it in 5 years. I don't know.
Thanks for giving us that.
That's a great. Also,
I tend to try to be a good community member.
and North Second doesn't have curb on the majority of it.
Some of it does, some of it doesn't, and it's crumbling or whatever.
And that one's rising to the point of poor condition outside of the newly passed back trench.
Yeah, but it was such
on my
poor
list.
condition, we were like, how come if so much of it's ripped up, they didn't just fix
So
the damn
that
road?
was a water main project.
No, I know, but I thought the leverage, from the leverage.
So, and we try to do those, like Fifth Street, bend west of Russell, that was a water project. And part of it is time and resources. I didn't get near the paving done this year. Number one, You guys remember winter stuck around last year until June. Yeah, and we remember we couldn't do leaf collection.
Yeah.
I lost a month and a half doing leaf collection in the spring. I didn't get near the paving done that I should have. But when we partner with the water, that's a great benefit because you got two divisions contributing funding to it. And if I can fix the whole street in conjunction with the water project, we try to do that. But I don't have enough resources to fix all the streets that water can do mains on.
Yeah.
We're doing, like
We're
6 or
trying.
7 water projects a year, and usually get Brian's help on 1 or 2.
And this year I told them no, because I got so far behind paving last year, I don't think I'm doing any for you guys this summer. 'Cause I gotta get more paving some streets.
And that one was so bad that water actually did extra asphalt work, like near where your old house was, like near the St. Pat section. But what it meant is they didn't do more pavement down at the kind of towards the Greeno side.
Yeah, where it's not as bad anyway.
Yeah.
Something, this is bringing up another good point that I think Jeremy mentioned in his presentation, that we're probably spending about half what we need to just to maintain our current pavement condition. Or, I mean, I don't know, we're underfunding maintenance, and so roads are just gonna continue to get worse unless we can keep up or find additional funding. And then the other thing that we've seen in infrastructure is that costs are the cost inflation is really far outpacing the increases in the funding that we have. And so projects are getting more expensive, and we're having to do it with the same amount of money that we had 5 years ago. We had a graphic in our last long range plan that showed between 2010 and 2016, construction and infrastructure costs went up by 60 or 70%, and the revenue available went up by about 10%. So not only are we not currently funding it the way we are, but things are getting more expensive and we don't have the funding to do it. So it can feel like a little bit of a grim.
Thanks for ending on a bummer.
But that's what he's saying.
But Aaron makes a really good point. All these factors, and just got just a touch of how complicated these are. It all has to play into it. So.
The other thing that happens is Brian does repave a street, and then I get a call saying, "Hey, people are driving too fast on it. What are you going to do about it?" So we can't win.
You say put in potholes.
I'll do complaints, particularly mostly on local streets. I've had a local street on my paving list for years. We finally get a chance to go fix it. 2 weeks later, Ben's group's getting calls because now people are going too fast. So maybe keep that in mind next time you hit a pothole. Think to yourself, well, maybe it's slowing the neighborhood traffic down.
It's a reverse speed bump.
Yeah. I am a huge advocate of speed tables too. Our crew built the lab.
They're nice.
Yeah.
That was our pilot.
Every day. It's great.
Quick note about terminology. We don't use speed bumps. Those are those terrible things in mall parking lots that rattle your teeth, and then you speed up afterwards. We call them speed humps or speed cushions. They're wider, they're gentler, they're much more effective, and they're not as dangerous. Like speed bumps have actually killed people on bikes, and so it's just not something that we will put in the public right of way. But speed humps or speed tables or speed cushions is the terminology we use for a slightly different design.
Are they made different?
Yeah, they're about 12 or 14 feet wide instead of just being a narrow thing.
And they're still made out of cement?
Yeah, asphalt primarily is what we
I watched a YouTube video on how to build those, just so you know. I
Who's responsible for the ones that are near the Boone and Crockett?
Boone and Crockett is responsible for those.
That has almost killed me.
Yeah, I've complained to them, and they've hung up the phone on me when I did.
Is that the private driveway going down?
Yeah, there's a parks
So wherever you
easement.
see
It
those,
was
those are Rock City, by the way.
yeah.
Like the ones over by the south side Walmart on, what is it, Willow Ridge? Anyway, those are actually Walmarts. And the potholes. Once you get about 30 feet inside of that access, that's the end of the 39th Street right-of-way line. That's all on Walmart. And believe me, I get calls on that one all the time.
I just wanted to say, I've called Public Works a few times, and I've always been met with just really kind and responsive employees. Really appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should end on that instead of Aaron's bummer. Thank you guys again for spending a Thursday evening, multiple Thursday evenings with other people, but this Thursday evening with us. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.